Every engineering leader eventually faces the exact same challenge. The technology shifts. What made your product great is now what is holding you back. Kevin Trilli, Chief Technology and Product Officer at FIS Amount, has seen this multiple times through semiconductors, finance, and now AI. And this is something that every technology leader will eventually face: how to lead their teams through this massive shift. I'm Suresh Mathew. This is One Idea. Welcome, Kevin, to the show.
Thanks, Suresh. I'm really happy to be here.
So, Kevin, you have been through every major technology shift, right? Right from .com to now AI. Now, what is the pattern that you commonly see with these massive shifts? How these changes will hit these companies, and some of them take too long to react, right? How do you identify these patterns, and how exactly do you think this time companies are going to react?
Some really good people get this right, and some really good people miss it. And there's a lot of dynamics that go into why that happens. Company pressures, shareholder commitments, constrained resources, go down the typical list. And I think that they always come back down to this: as a leader, of which you are leading your company, as you know, have to make decisions based on imperfect data, filtering out hype, mapping that to your constraints, and then taking that and acting on it. And acting on that means using resources to do something. And I think that the patterns you see is that's always kind of the same set of parameters that need to be implemented. But the uncertainty around that decision point is always there, and it's an intense feeling. It's lonely. You often see it first or with a group of people. You have to keep repeating the message to people over and over. And then at the end of the day, you need to figure out how to redirect resources from the current to the future. And all of that seems cliche and pretty easy to explain in a few bullet points. But when you're, in the heat of the battle, having to make that action is where a lot of people just succumb to the pressure of the present. And I think that's where the structures need to be in place that says, if you can avoid a reactive scenario, the good leaders do that. And it doesn't mean you're going to be right, but you're at least going to have a lower risk attempt at being successful. And you can think of this in the 3 Horizons frameworks or an innovation framework, where you need a non-zero set of resources looking at these potential future states. We're going to get deep into the AI scenario, where I think it's being told, in quite great detail through, the social media and other forums, where we can act a little differently right now. The key is avoiding going to a reactive mode, going to a proactive mode in the way that fits for your company and your situation. And I think we can unpack that quite a bit of what that really means for technology leaders.
Some of these companies take too long to react. Why does that happen?
Yeah, I think there's the pressure of the status quo, the comfort of the status quo, the lack of certainty around what the future is going to hold. Again, all classic reasons where you have to actually play with that psychology as you think about the structure of your product and tech orgs and in your overall company. In some cases, again, like you can think about when, cloud happened and everyone moved from on-prem to cloud. That was a big trust gap. That was kind of the big thing that we had to worry about on that. Mobile was like, well, everyone's going to walk around with their phone. What's going to be different? It's going to be the same thing as the web, right? No, all these new use cases showed up that we couldn't even envision. And you play that kind of over and over into this world of AI and go, okay, what are going to be those new realities? And so you really need to have somebody, and I will say at the end as a key message, including the leader, hands-on some of these opportunities, to understand them, to build that instinct. Because otherwise, just reading research and third parties, that's hard to translate into action sometimes.
Now, let's unpack the TrustArc experience, right? There, you had a mix of 2 things that are significantly different, right? One is your legacy technology systems and the new systems, right? Now, when it comes to these kind of technology shifts, how do you pick what has to be changed or experimented first, and what should be left alone?
Yeah, this one was interesting in that we had the business premise in the original venture round was to try to build a technology component for the market that it was in with a service-based product. And when you think about that outside of the nature of that problem statement, it sort of came down to what's your second act as a company and how do you align that with the market dimension of where that product market should be. And the first thing is you need to understand that market really well. When you're with a current product in a company, you're looking at a set of tasks in the job to be done of your customer in a very specific way. Most likely where you need to go next is an adjacent, higher priority problem or higher opportunity to create value task that you can solve for them. Question is, how do you get that? When you're selling to them a product where they don't see value as much as they did, or they're looking at other problems that you can't give authoritative response on, you need to be an expert in that market. So this goes back a little bit what we were just talking about. You need to get in that market in some way, shape, or form. In some cases, you can do that through your services org or start a services org, almost in a consultative way, to learn the market. By doing that, you learn the full suite of things they need to do, and that consulting function can bring back real market data for you to look at what are the priorities, and maybe we're fourth on the list, and we need to be one or two. So we did that at TrustArc, as we created a new consulting function that then became this gateway into figuring out what our technology platform should be. In other cases, similar to that, we had to look at why our products weren't being used in certain ways. And we found that in a market, there are different segments that behave very uniquely. And we had a direct segment of enterprise, a direct segment of called mid-market, but we had another market that was indirect channel served that was sort of working in its own behavior. And we had to, this is at Verisign, we had to look at ways to address that market very differently than we did the rest of our business. New products, new licensing, new pricing, new go-to-market. So in both cases, we did that by being active to get signals out of that market to understand, now let's go bring product development in and start to build the new product in that. But you have to be active. And so that could be your subject matter experts, as I mentioned before, consulting your services organizations, or putting a new product into market that's just a hypothesis to actively learn and then quickly iterate. And we know in the enterprise market, that's a little more tricky to do with their expectations, but there's ways you can even do that with moderate investment versus full investment.
Now, when you started off, we use that word proactive versus reactive, right? And that we clearly know that there are two sets of companies. Now, how do they both, from the technology change standpoint or shift standpoint, what is the impact difference for both?
I would say, obviously, it's ideal to be on the proactive side as much as possible. Anyone that's been in business for a while knows that you have existing products. Maybe you've acquired a product line. Maybe a market change has made a product line now approach the end of its life cycle over the next couple of years. And in some of those cases, they could be a quick market change with a new competitor, or we all know with some of the bigger players back in the day, it was Apple, and now it's Anthropic, are making changes that actually fundamentally impact some markets. So I don't think reactive is something you can just say, let's be proactive all the time and avoid it. Some people love doing turnarounds, obviously. There's those private equity, that kind of audience too. So I think you need to have skills for both. You're going to have a portfolio someday that's going to have a product that's the end of life. You're going to have to manage that. So there's different approaches for both sides of that, obviously. And I think in a reactive position, you need to make some decisions quick because you've got live customers, live revenue, maybe customers losing satisfaction, or it's just at least starting to think about, well, maybe this new company with this new approach is better, or this product is actually going to solve my challenges better. That becomes pretty intense. And we can talk a little bit more about that. The proactive side's less intense. And this is the art of the leadership that says you always have to be thinking of a couple what-if scenarios. Your product is going to end of life at some point. Could be 20 years, could be 10 years, it could be 5 to 7 years. Pick your favorite hype curve. What if would happen there? People join companies at different stages too. So if you're lucky to be a founder, hopefully it's 20 years. But you need to have a what-if scenario. And the what-if scenario is going to warrant having a non-zero set of resources looking at what's next. And that could be someone's part-time job, a senior leader, technologist that's doing that. If you're Google and you have an R&D group, obviously you can fund a lot of that fundamental research. But at the venture stage, you usually don't have that. So having a structure that looks at your core business, your platform generally, and some degree of what's coming in the future. And even some of that, what I've done currently is those people are actually part-time, now full-time into that. So you can even start it as some of your high-profile people in your company that can spend the time on these challenges and give them that opportunity space to look at Horizon 3 or Horizon 2, depending on the case. And then as Horizon 3 comes to Horizon 2, you make them full-time. So there's scrappy ways you can do this, but the point is you have somebody looking at that all the time. Because when it happens, and it happens quick, you quickly flip to the reactive side of the equation, which becomes much more difficult because of the revenue pressure, the intensity of the business implication of having to come up with what's next in a hurry. I've gone through one or two of those. That's the least preferred approach, obviously. You want to have more time to be smart and to learn from the market before you have to go and do an expensive build around it.
Got it. And the small Pathfinder team, do they have just Eng, just R&D, or Eng, R&D, and a small sales? So you have to test everything or just one thing?
You would need, depending on what the thing you're looking at, it could be, you could have product, tech/eng. And what I've been lucky with is some people that I have in this type of product role are sort of 0 to 1 product people. They're out selling for intelligence and finding those first 5 customers where you don't have the normal sales function doing that. It's a product BD head that's doing both. And in real time, trying to figure out how to convince someone to be a design partner with you. Now, usually behind that, you have the revenue business and the success business that's creating the context of the relationship, but they may be a non-customer just coming in to work with co-developing this product. And again, I've seen deals come through in this model that became large revenue deals over time, but they actually became our first design customers because they had an existing product that wasn't servicing them well, and they wanted to be active in the development of the new one. That was product and eng-led versus sales-led.
Clear. Now, when it comes to AI adoption, the first question is, where should we adopt, right? Maybe it's okay. This product is insulated from all the things that can happen, which is quite unusual, rare. But how do we pick the right first step? What is the first step when these kind of things happen? For a leader, what shall he do first?
AI, we're fortunate on that there's a tremendous personal use of it that we can see and experience firsthand. With business to business and enterprise, you don't always get that luxury. So I would say in this case, explore that as much as you can to build a personal view of the tech. Your question's really important in that I think you need to go back to first principles on your product. I'm a software as a service product. There are other products that are more infrastructure, maybe more transactional, that AI may or may not impact them as much. But you need to analyze all the aspects of your product today that would say, within the last 10, 15 years of software as a service and beyond, the product kind of ended up asymptotically at this stage of what it is today, based on the limitations and the value that it gives, right? You oftentimes need to figure out what the product does. You need to learn the language of that product. I'm a business person. I want to solve a problem, but I've got to learn what the product software is telling me how to do that. I need to add a bunch of information to that product to get started. I need to configure the product to make it work for my on and on and on, right? All these steps that are fundamental to software. Now you bring this capability matrix in that says, what if I just had a very simple way where I can have a business conversation with my product and all that stuff gets pushed down into a configuration layer? Now I am having my needs better served by this product without having to invest all this time figuring out why XYZ vendor is asking me to call this, that, or whatever it may be. So I think these first principles allow you to go, where's the biggest opportunity we have to improve? Is it new capability? Is it ease of onboarding and getting to market faster? Ease of management? Or optimization of the business purpose of the product? Right? If it's fast to onboard, who cares? Is it solving my business problem really well? And is it continually to learn and improve and solve that problem better as I use the product? Welcome Gen AI now. So I look at it in those parameters and then say, first off, AI, Gen AI, LMs allow those different parts, the interfaces, the connection APIs, the pricing model like you wrote about, all these different aspects of SaaS and what are the opportunity spaces that are presented, and then go back to what your product's supposed to do. And how do you get more and more to business value and strip out all that SaaS complexity? That's one way I would frame the opportunity space right now.
Now, Kevin, I think you are one of the few that I have seen really experiences from a 0 to 1 startup to a company that that's seeing a massive shift, and you're helping them develop a new product and things like that. Now, there is a hot topic now. SaaS isn't dying or not, right? So we all talk about it. I talked about it too. Your perspective, right? Your angle. You're running a live SaaS business, and you're seeing AI in action. Now, tell us your perspective on, is this happening? How is it happening? And how can companies react to it?
No, it's great. This is
Is this happening?
this is happening, and it is what I would consider, of all these different stages and being luckily in a position of leadership for this one, the most exciting of all the technology
Nice.
cycles I've been through.
And why do you say so?
I say that both of nervousness and worry, but also optimism and opportunity. And I think that's the right level of paranoia and hype to kind of digest into what you think can be the thing to do. Because to your question, great, we actually have a very modern product. We have a generation 3 platform that we just built a couple years ago, all the usual SaaS modern stack elements. We have great existing legacy products with great customers at scale that are being serviced extremely well. We have now an opportunity of being acquired to be part of a larger ecosystem where you have more other opportunities there to have other types of products come into our portfolio. And in all those, we're already thinking about our 4th generation. And what the 4th generation platform is this AI agentic framework that we need to start to think about based on the last topic of how things can change. Are things going to go away for good reason? And are things going to be augmented? Or are new things going to be presented, opportunities? And you must do that through the vision of your value that you're delivering to the customer. Because who cares if you got a bunch of AI that does a bunch of things? If the core business purpose isn't being serviced better, your customers aren't going to buy it anyway. Maybe fully agentic and all these, who cares if it's not solving my problem? So you got to take that map of the technology capabilities, whatever your vision is on the SaaS or other product you have, and then go, how do we get closer to that inner core of delivering value? And how do we make that inner core grow? And I think if you use that lens, then you can select how to evolve your current product. Maybe you have a 1st gen platform right now. Maybe you have a 3rd gen. You can decide where that 4th gen platform or nth gen platform needs to be based on these new tool sets. And that's the analysis we're doing right now. We have to keep building and scaling our business. You can't just stop and go full AI. Some companies have done this. I think Intercom's done a great job in terms of repositioning the whole company. But they have a different set of dynamics with AI than we do, and other companies may have. So you got to figure out what is your threat and your opportunity to use classic SWOT, and then make your calculation of how do you level investment appropriately to look at this unknown world where you want to be the front of the pack, the front of the race, the front of the peloton, or in the peloton. Because all those are different strategies here. Even being front of the pack, you may run out of gas, so you get covered by someone drafting behind you. I'm not even a cyclist. I just watch it on TV. But being at least front of the peloton in this market, I think we have to be, because you want to be shaping the industry, not being reactive to this industry, because this one's moving really fast. And that's kind of the calculation that companies and leaders need to make, is where do you want to be in that space? And then how do you start to think of your current stack as it relates to these capabilities that are coming, and translate them to your product strategy and technology platform strategy. Technology platform actually informed the product strategy in many cases here. These capabilities, these tools, but then your product components need to leverage those in a smart way that maps to your value proposition. So my unique role of looking across both product and tech, I think, is the future of AI also, where product managers are going to be able to generate live code, designers generate live code, engineers either have a team of agents generating a ton of code, but also they can describe the problem and generate the full stack. So we have to think about that also, of how we get there.
100% in agreement. I'm with you. Now, with FIS Amount, right? So you have a framework, actual framework that really works, right? So now tell us more about your framework.
Yeah, no, I think the pieces kind of leaked out earlier where I think you need to obviously understand your product and your customer, I'll call it job to be done on the product side, and keep that really well articulated. You then go look at the principle, and again, just talking agentic AI here and things. Take those levels of what AI can enable and apply that to each step along your product. And in some cases, you can think, and we're lucky as part of FIS, it's a large multi-business unit business that has tremendous data assets, many, many products that banks use. I have the next benefit to look at the combination of those products and figure out how they can all benefit each other. So the other part we didn't really talk about was the data layer here, is AI is only as good as the data. And so hopefully you have some data in your company that you can leverage and build something unique in your AI, private model or not. And I think that's the part that we look at also that says if we can infuse more data, we can process it faster even, and we can actually increase our value proposition in a unique way. So you need to also look at that aspect of not just like the chatbot interaction, but what makes that interaction smarter and more value. The data you have in your company may be hiding some value in there. So you need to have somebody looking at that. In my organization now, we have data and AI as one group. So that they're
data as one group.
Yeah. So knowledge, data, and then the AI tooling is part of this team.
Ideally, the context graph can be built just within that team.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, that needs to make its way across to the product roadmap teams. So this is a way that we can run in parallel while the roadmap teams can start to adopt these in the product themselves.
That's a smart idea. Basically, keep these teams together, so the rest of the teams will have something useful coming out, and these guys would have already tested the quality.
They can run really fast right now because they're unburdened. But that doesn't mean they're going to run the whole year and build AI products. We need the product to be AI products. And so there are these points like on a highway, different on-ramps that they will be entering into different teams based on their next set of releases. And hopefully at some point, this becomes fully embedded within the product teams, and this is on the next set of capabilities. That's our vision.
So now where did AI fall short in your mind?
Yeah, I think it's funny because we have, there's sort of like pre-December last year and post-December last year. And I think with the Opus models and other things that happened there and the continuation into this year, I think people were really, and myself included, of like, that's not even close to making, again, caveat, we serve financial institutions and giving them something that might work some of the time. We're not that kind of MVP type of company, right? It's got to work, right? These are banks that are running processes. I think when we first, as a group, saw the hallucinations and some of the, unpredictability or randomness of multiple, exact tasks coming back, like, this is nowhere close. And I think some people became doubters, of the timing of this and the readiness of this. That might have caused a bit of reputational issues that I think have since been resolved with some great data points from our colleagues in the industries and ourselves internally that are starting to show you can get over that crank now with these current set of tools. So I really think that was, as we've been well documented, a pretty seminal moment in the readiness of this stuff for prime time.
Now, the engineering team that you hired, right? They were hired for specific skill sets, and I'm sure most of them at least did not see this coming, right? How do you upskill them?
Fantastic topic. I've had a couple really great leaders on my team jump both feet in on this, and they've embodied at the leadership level. We've done, back in the early part of this cycle, lunch and learns with ourselves and our partners. I mentioned a hackathon. We've given tools. We've had large format training. Now we're getting into what I call birds of a feather, small group training. The term I'm in my mind using now is we have to shift the default, where I think going into, again, we'll talk post Opus and other milestones there, to doing this experimentally or doing this side of desk to this is your first approach. And to do that, you get into, is the platform ready? Is our SDLC able to all the way end to end? Is every team along the way able to accept code generated from different sources? And those are some of the things that we're working on now to prepare for scale. So moving from a couple teams and experts to now making this work as a standard, it doesn't happen overnight. In some cases, your platforms aren't ready for all of this, but we have some unbelievable opportunities to uncork this capability, but it must be done in a way that the platform doesn't get, we've heard a couple recent stories of platforms kind of getting in trouble with different code getting. So you see that and you get a little bit, okay, let's take the foot off the gas a little bit and make sure we have governance in place. We test, agents, whatever the different things are. So we're at that stage right now of really getting to that level of understanding while still having teams and individuals that are the power users really cranking at volume. And I think the final point is the classic is top-down directive versus bottoms-up. And how do you meet in the middle is kind of what I'm looking at. And so we really want to incent people to explore. They need time to do that. Busy roadmaps don't allow for that time. But we also want to, to your point, make sure that everyone is doing this as their standard very soon. This is the way going forward. And this is the bet, the moment for all of us in the space of building technology, is that we have to get to an AI first approach here.
100%. Now, what is one thing that you're almost sure that engineering leaders are going to regret making in another 18 months or 24 months, right?
I think this one's different for a lot of people.
Probably, let me rephrase that question, right? Either regret making or not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to go the latter way, which is we were talking before this about always looking back and maybe saying that you could have gone faster on this. And I think the question for everyone out there is, what's building your instinct to make, and it's not like you don't do it at all, the appropriate bet with your organization and team at the right time. And there's a point where this is just the way you go forward and do product development, but how do you get there quickly? So I think the takeaway is that don't be looking at yourself in 18 months and going, yeah, this really works and I should have gone faster. Maybe this is a pretty good place to do a bigger bet. So I would just say that's probably the thing that people, and again, this is an individual leadership point that at the end of the day reflects your company and how you're representing that to your business or whatever it may be. You need to be a champion there and form your opinion. It might, a small, medium-sized bet might be appropriate, but probably a bigger bet's appropriate for this cycle. And getting to that point of not looking back and saying, I had these assumptions. So state your assumptions, reflect on your past decisions and say, this is what I'm betting on. And it's appropriately risky if you feel it, or appropriately comfortable if you really feel it.
Now, for us, we are an born AI company, and I see that it is still not easy for everyone to adopt Gen AI, right? So that's different again. Is there a quick way to start that adoption, or quick first step that they can do to say, you know what, it's okay. Maybe it's a mistake, but it's okay, right? If there's it's not an expensive mistake.
Yeah, I think you can sandbox experimentation pretty easily. And one of the techniques that we're exploring, which is, hey, why not let that product manager rifle code all the way through? So can you pick a bug, a small feature, or a product feature that was built in product A that just needs to be ported to B, C, and D? Same pattern, different implementation. There's a set of projects that you can take risk on that if they're wrong, it's not going to be like the end of the world. The other is, here's stuff we're never going to get to in the next 6 months. Let's go pick a couple of those things off the plate and place a bet, instrument it as AI only, document it. We did this experiment, product manager and a developer, and they documented every single Jira ticket using only AI code generation, all the way to live working marketing product demo.
Without touching it.
Yeah. And so that was another experiment that you can do that then gives you something to talk about internally that says, so let's try this on the next level of and this was a new product feature. So it either existed or it did.
They could be the ambassador.
So yeah. And so that would be another example of just like, go test a couple ideas here and then bring them back. And then you can really de-risk that across the rest of the organization with some real data.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kevin, for your time and for sharing your thoughts on how to be proactive, which is the most important thing here. I think on hindsight, we will all have our theories and those are all going to be absolutely perfect. But how to be proactive and calculate the risks and take it before it happens. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Suresh.